All right, so now we're going to do the color wheel. The color wheel obviously is made up of all of the colors. Um, so the primary colors are pretty easy. You know, you have your yellow plus a little bit of red makes orange. And then once you have orange, you add just a little bit of yellow to it to make yellow-orange. And then once you have orange, you add a little red to it to make red-orange. You just really want to make sure that you have distinct colors. It doesn't really matter what order that you're doing it. And you don't need tons of paint. You can see I just barely have all of the colors. When you make purple, purple is really hard to make it'll be more of a maroon-ish color. But whatever you make purple, you're just going to pull some of the blue off and some of the red off to make sure that it's a different color than your purple. Okay? Real purple can be factory bought. Then you just need to go to blue and then make your green so that you can pull some off to make blue-green and pull some off to make yellow-green. So most of you did this in Exploring Art. We had a big project based off of that. You just want to make sure that there are distinct colors from blue-green to blue-yellow, okay? Then, with whatever paint you have left, instead of just washing it off, let's put a layer down so that you have an even coat for when you start your layers. So you just need a nice layer, and it needs to dry so that you can see how to get crisp details. So just lay down the paint, let it sit, let it dry. All right, we're going to move on to watered down paint so it looks like watercolor. So what you're going to do is use less, here you can see less acrylic paint and more water. I'm doing a sunset here, but when you put the acrylic paint on, here you see I'm just taking a little water and I'm blending it on the paper. The most common mistake is using too much pigment, too much acrylic paint. Here again, now I'm using water to blend it down a little bit, okay? So it's kind of cool that you know that you can do a watercolor effect using acrylic paint. Acrylic paint does dry really fast, so if you are planning to do this, you have to make sure that you are able to work fast because once you put down the pigment, you have to get water right away so that it can blend as you're working, okay? You can do whatever you want. I just did a sunset just so that I could get the layers to move together. And again, you just add water right to, not too much water, but right to your paper. You saw you can wet an area and pull some off just like you can with watercolor, but as soon as it dries, that's it. So that's why you have to be, you have to know that you're able to work kind of fast, okay? That's it for watercolor. Again, when it dries, you can add more detail to it, which is cool, being able to use acrylic. So we're going to do wet on wet and wet on dry, and what it is blending. Wet on wet is blending the acrylic paint when everything is wet. Wet on dry is doing a blank layer in the back, like a bottom layer, letting it dry, and then doing wet blending on top, okay? So it just creates a richer color, but you do need to mix your colors so you have them because when you are blending with acrylic, it does all need to be wet, okay? Otherwise you're going to get lines. So here you see I'm just laying down a background layer so that I can paint on top. This will dry while I'm working on the wet on wet, and then I'll be able to put more paint on top. The reason why you do wet on dry is to have more richer color. This is kind of your base layer, and you can paint on top. Okay, so you really need to have, here you can see that I need to mix more because I really was running out of paint. But you really need to have your highlight, your midtone, and your shadow. So whatever is your midtone, that's what you're going to make. And then you're going to make your shadow and your highlight so that you have enough paint to blend because acrylic dries so fast, you really need to make sure that you have enough because it's, by the time, especially when you're trying to blend, by the time that you make new color, um, the first layer has dried and you can't mix it. I mean, you can, you just have to lay down more pigment. Okay, so I have all of this, the paint tone is ready here. You can see that I added some red to make purple for some of the shadow areas. Okay, so you start in your mid-tone. So I kind of lay that out first. And then wash your brush off, dry it. When you get your highlight, you kind of put it right above and you mix it right down into your mid-tone. So you use your brush. You can see the highlight. I just added white to the top and I blended it down into my color. So you'll see, if you were up close, you would see that it blended a little bit better. Here's the shadow. You have to wash off your brush. Your shadow is such a dark color, and then you bring your mid-tone into your shadow. Okay, so you're blending your colors into each other. So that's why it's called wet on wet, because all of your paint needs to be wet. So then when you do wet on dry, it's already dry. So I just added mid-tone. Even though my base layer was my mid-tone color, you still have to add it on top so that you can get the color to mix. So it all has to be wet or it won't mix the way that you want to, and you'll have an outline, and that's what we're trying not to have. Okay, so I'm trying to do the shadow here, so you have to have enough mid-tone. Again, when you're ready to blend your shadow color, you blend your mid-tone into your shadow. If you pull your shadow too high, it will not work. Okay, so here, when you do it, you should be able to see that it's a richer color when you have a dry background. Okay, doing layers, you can see with acrylic, I dropped some water and it wasn't totally dry. And if you wipe it off, you will see the white of the background. So I just went with it. I'm going to do some stripes here on my layers, but I need to do it and let it dry. So this would be like your second layer. Green was your first, and now blue is your second. So you'll be able to kind of see what happens in the next video, but I can now add more here just because it's dry in the middle. I'm trying not to get close to the blue, but because I want to have orange go on top, if you're going to have a bright color on top of a dark color with acrylic, you have to put white first. It's called blocking out your color. You have to block it out so that the bright color has something to sit on. Okay, so lots to think of with acrylic. I know some of you are getting a little overwhelmed, but once you learn these tips and tricks, so I just put this light blue on top. You would never see it this bright if I just put it right on top of the green. Looks like I didn't do orange like I thought I was going to do. It's different picture. Here you can see the examples. You can do some detail.